I don't want to set the world.
Forlorn is a virtual reality experience in which users will navigate a flooded city by motorboat. They'll find remnants of the civilization that inhabited the city through various notes and recorded messages, uncovering the mystery of who they are and how the city came to be flooded. The goal of Forlorn is to immerse users in a narrative-driven experience that makes use of environmental soundscapes, narrative artifacts, and user imagination to deliver a story. This is intended to be accomplished without forceful exposition, rather through user expression and exploration. This is accomplished through using the Oculus Rift to place users in our environment and enable them to express their agency to create a blur between a plausible experience, such as floating on water, and an extremely imaginative development. We want the user to experience a situation that they likely never could in the real world, being completely isolated with no one around.
I'm getting a little bit nervous during the whole experience.
I definitely felt a lot of empathy, but more for difficult emotions, kind of sadness, loss.
I think you've done something interesting in that you've created this emotional frame, which I think is very interesting, this idea of you're not helpless because you have the boat, but there's not much you can do because there isn't much you can actually do.
Additionally, we want these initial impressions to generate curiosity. This is intended to be accomplished through narrative and contextual cues placed throughout the environment. By looking at these objects, users will be able to listen to narrated dialogue of different characters, detailing what happened to them while adding further context to the overall story.
For me, it was like finding what has happened. There was a lot of flood, there's a lot of water, cars submerged.
I thought the story was about loss, that all of a sudden this world that we had known was no longer existed, it was completely submerged.
The team wanted to design a virtual reality experience where the user didn't have to actually walk, and the physical setup could be made to very closely match the digital one. This led to the team deciding to create an experience where the user would be in a boat. We also wanted to design a narrative that would reinforce user agency and interactivity. Specifically, this led to developing an experience where the user could control the boat freely and engage their agency to discover the narrative at their own pace. From this point, we outlined possible scenarios and narrative settings to explore and use in this project. We then decided to pursue an open-world narrative that focused on a sole survivor stranded in a flooded city. Forlorn incorporates media immersion framework, primarily sensory immersion and imaginative immersion, to further involve and invest users in the experience. This project achieves sensory immersion through the use of 3D environmental sound to engage the senses of the user as an element of immersiveness. Sound is a key aspect of Forlorn, as it is used to help guide the user through the environment by following audio cues and acts as a means of providing feedback during the experience.
Well, I use sound because I think that's the way the experience was designed, to try to get me to move towards either a siren or a blinking of some kind. Because the world was fairly gray and bleak, and the only way to really try to hit those marks was to try to hear the sound and move towards the sound.
The foremost focus of Forlorn is imaginative immersion, which is conveyed through environmental storytelling and user-discovered exposition in the form of collectible narrative artifacts. These artifacts are physically represented by a 3D model, and when interacted with, trigger recorded monologues from different characters. These artifacts provide context to the environment users are in, providing the user with some details but still allowing them to use their imagination to connect to how these different artifacts relate to one another. This project uses Unity 3D with various models imported and created in Maya, SketchUp, and Unity itself. This experience is controlled with an Xbox 360 gamepad, with the left joystick being used to control and move the boat. Animations, scripting, and environmental design were created and implemented through Unity and C#. Ultimately, it was found that the project was successful in generating curiosity in users, with many inquiring and searching for narrative artifacts to discover more about the events that led to the beginning of the experience.
At the end, it seemed like about climate change and how it was like a major corporation that kind of like screwed everyone over and tried to trick them.
Suddenly you found a place you can get in, and you find hope in a closed house.
However, there were some cases of users experiencing motion sickness largely attributed to the size of the waves or focusing on too much movement during the boat's acceleration or deacceleration.
The propensity for motion sickness put me off. It made me not want to floor it and go fast and look around everywhere. I was very hesitant because I didn't want to get ill.
If the team were to continue to iterate on Forlorn, we would like to alleviate this issue of motion sickness by experimenting with head bobbing, reducing the size of waves, and researching more methods to more accurately portray traveling on a boat. While there is still room to improve the experience, Forlorn was ultimately successful in evoking the sensation of isolation and helplessness in users, as well as generating curiosity in discovering narrative artifacts and experiencing a story at the user's own pace.
There was some sense by the people who designed the game that they had an appreciation and understanding for, the fragility of our world, and that the event occurrence of a flood or that kind of thing environmentally could happen. It is a possibility, and we'll be facing more of those events as we move along in our lives here.